I miss AFI. I miss AFI classes actually.
You miss you miss being in them, like being a student.
Yeah, it was great. Breathing film 24/7. It's a privilege. It hasn't happened after that the same way.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. It's a privilege. It's like this little bubble, this little moment in time that I mean, that's the best way to like the best mindset to approach it is just like, don't think of anything else. Don't think of the loans you're gonna have later on. Just like enjoy this moment because you'll never have that again.
Yeah, it's and some people, I was very aware of that when I went because I had been trying to kind of like get that for myself for some time. And when I got accepted to AFI, I remember saying to myself, okay, that's it. If I get in, I'm gonna forget about the world. I'm just gonna do that for 2 years and not think about anything else. And I was looking forward to it. But I've realized that some of my some fellows, they came to learn that after AFI. You
Yeah.
know, when you kind of like get submerged in the real world, you look back and it's like, man, it was fun.
Yeah. 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 Right. And some of them still come back then. They still hang out because they missed it when they were actually fellows. Wait, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about because you had
Okay.
a bunch of experience pre AFI, right? You had
Yeah.
quite a life before AFI.
Yeah, I started pretty young working when I was, I guess, 20, 19, 20 years old. And when I came to AFI, I was about to turn 35. So I had
Oh,
already been working for like 15 years and, doing many things, but always kind of like getting away like from a film, which is what I always wanted to do. So that was the opportunity for me to kind of like, okay, it's been a long time. Now I just want to do this.
but you were doing things kind of related to film, right? Weren't you running like a network?
Yeah, but in Ecuador, for some reason, the industry here is very small, and television has always been separated from film.
Mm,
The film industry is like a very small community, and television is like something else. So sometimes not anymore. It used to be that way, but you wouldn't even hang out with the film people. It was like
right. There's no
uh,
crossover. There's no,
there was no crossover.
yeah.
You will mostly do like entertainment shows. I used to produce Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, for example, for like 4 seasons, things like that.
Yeah.
And then I was head of production of this network, and with them I did many formats, like different types of shows. And at the end of my work there, they decided to do a series, and they offered me the challenge because I've never done a series before. And I remember the owner of the network, he wanted to do this version of a show that had been in the air for many years in Spain, a very successful show. And he wanted to do the Ecuadorian version, and he said, "Are you up for it?" And I'm like, "I don't know anything about series." And he was like, "We have got in touch with these people in Spain, and they are willing to help us. So you're going to get to go there for a few weeks, learn their ways, come back and tell us how it's done." And I was like, man, that's amazing. So I worked on that project for like 2 years, and we ended up shooting 8 episodes. And I was like producing, but also running, working with the writers, because I came into the network as a creative person, and they said, okay, we'll teach you how to handle the finances and the budgets and all those things, because I wasn't, I didn't know anything about that, and I learned with them. And now I was, as a producer, doing what I always liked, which is writing and kind of like getting myself into the creative part. And looking back at those years, because this was back in 2011, it was kind of like what we call the showrunner right now.
Yeah.
You were in the writers' room, and also having meetings with executives, trying to get budgets approved, and all those kinds of things. And after that show, the network decided not to do it anymore. They were like brave enough to invest and produce an 8 episode series. And after we finished, before it was released, so they didn't even give it a chance to see if it was going to work or not. they decided to go a different route. And that's when I remember that that's what I wanted to do. And and I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna try to go in that direction. And I found AFI a year later, actually. I
That
didn't
that
I
inspired you to start looking for AF or
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
the next step. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So did you get to direct any of those episodes?
No, I didn't direct any of those.
But
That's
you
why
got to work with directors and you got to see the process, right? And
I got to work with very close with directors. I had to in a way hire the director. So I met with many of them, and we had to make a decision who was the best fit for the show. So I had to learn a little bit more what a director does. I had directed short films back in school, but then I kind of like got into television and stayed there for many years. So, and I was
wait, so
always on.
they never aired those 8 episodes?
No, they did. They
Oh, they
did.
did. Oh, okay. But they
Yeah, I
didn't.
left the network, and they decided to air the series like 6 months later,
Mhm.
and it was good. But I was doing something else at that moment.
Right. Right. So it gives you the bug though to go apply to AFI because you're like, I want to focus. What was it a way also to kind of step away to reinvent yourself as a film person because it is so segregated between film and TV there?
Yeah, and actually, the series was an opportunity to kind of like cross over to film,
Ah,
because it was the first series that was shot in the same way that we know series are shot now. It was single camera.
mhm.
Uh, the staging, the process was similar to how we shoot films now. So I learned that, and it was very different for the network. So I had to put together the team. I went to the film people, and the first thing that they would tell me is like, television, no way, man. First of all, they never have a budget. They always want to use their cameras, things like that. And I would have to convince them that this was different, that we were going to have a writer's room, and we were going to work on developing the series first, and kind of like learning our ways with time and budget. And some people got convinced, and they brought others on board. So at the end, it was a mixed team, and we realized that it
Huh.
was possible. I mean, I realized that,
Yeah.
but still in my head, it was like two different things, television and film.
Yeah.
Even
So
after
you were
the series.
were you one of the first ones to do that, like in Ecuador, to kind of bring them together? And
Yeah. I believe before that, in Ecuador used to do a lot of soap operas,
yeah,
and they will shoot with a switcher board and 5 cameras, in front of
yeah,
what I always say, like against the wall, and that was kind of like the way, right? Uh, Movies had been made, and some drama series, but they ended up like looking like soap operas as well. And when I went to Spain, I remember that it blew my mind that they had like they had built sets that they could remove the walls and shoot 360, and they were using one or two cameras. And I was looking at the monitors, and I was realizing that it was not looking the same as I was when I was watching the episodes. They were great. And I remember Todd Tetrenas, he's an ASC cinematographer, the one who shot that series for years. He told me, "Oh, it's because I need to show you something." And he took me to a room, and he said, "This is a thing called baselight. And what we do here is color correction." And I was like, "Damn, that was in Ecuador." It was like, I had heard about color correction, but only for commercials. Nobody was doing it. Or
yeah,
film would go to, it was all shot in film, and they would go to Argentina or the US to develop and color correct there. But it was not something that was used in television. And so when I came back, I told them, okay, we need to shoot this way. We need to build the sets. So we built an entire. I remember it was a series that happened in the '60s. So we built this neighborhood in one of the parking lots of the network,
the
and
whole
we
neighborhood, you like a city street.
was like 3 streets,
Wow.
like 4 buildings and 3 streets.
Yeah.
And and
That's
we kicked
big.
everybody out of the parking lot. We said, okay, we're going to build a set now. And everybody was like, what? What's happening? Where are we going to park? We're going to build. So we did some crazy things for like 2 years, and I learned a lot there. And I knew that there was no way back for me,
Yeah.
but I kind of like wanted to learn more
Yeah.
and find out more.
What
And
a great
actually,
experience.
it was great. When I left the network, I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And me and the DP that shot the series, we started this color correction company. And through that company, yeah, crazy. I lost all my savings there, actually.
Oh, really? It
Yeah,
didn't do well?
it didn't do well at all. I
Mm.
mean,
They
we
weren't ready
got
for color correction.
we got the base light,
Yeah.
and it was a great facility, with DCI compliant and all the toys that we wanted. And we thought that most of the films in the region were gonna come to us because we were offering like a very good price for the service. And when we started the company, the other companies that used to provide that service in Argentina or Chile, they said, okay, let's down our prices as well, and they killed us. We
Uh,
ended up staying alive, with the project for like 1 year and a half, and that was it.
yeah.
But there was a film that we color corrected, that the cinematographer, her name is Magela. She had graduated from AFI,
Okay.
and I met her, and she told me about AFI, and I remember that she was great. Her work was amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, um, Matthew Libatic was helping her at that moment, I remember, and she was telling me about him. So I got into AFI's website and started learning, and I realized that I wanted to go there. So
Huh.
after that, I applied for the first time. I applied to AFI twice, actually.
Oh, so it didn't happen the first time. Always directing? Always applied to directing?
Yeah, always directing. I knew at that moment that I wanted to direct, but I didn't have anything. I had
Yeah.
short films that I had shot like many years ago. And so I put together kind of like a reel with some stuff that I had, and I submitted that, and it didn't work. But I remember that I got to the interview, and they told me you should make something, write something. So the next year I wrote a script and shot this short film, and the second time it worked. I got in.
That's great. Well, I mean, that's, the company you started, it didn't succeed, but it led to, you making this big life decision. Because, there's like an alternate reality where that company does really well. You stay in Ecuador and you run this, kind of post-production color correction company, and you could be doing well, but like you're not realizing that potential that was in you.
Definitely, it had to fail for me to find my path. Yeah, definitely. It
Yeah.
got me to cross over to the film world.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it did. And to meet this cinematographer, learn about AFI, and knowing exactly what I wanted to do. That was the purpose. It
So
cost me
so
a
when
lot of
you met her and then you
cost me a lot
applied,
of money. That was the purpose.
yeah, you found your life. But you were dead set on AFI. It's not like you were also applying to USC or all these other schools. You just wanted
only
AFI.
only AFI. Yeah.
Hmm. Very cool. Well, you got in. So when you moved to LA, was that your first time going to Los Angeles?
No, because I have family there. I have an
Ah, okay.
uncle that been living there for 50 years. So I've been in LA a few times. Never related to work or film. But I had them, and they hosted me for at the beginning, helped me to start.
Mhm.
And so it was very convenient. It was good.
Yeah. So not as scary of a big life change when you know people, you know.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. And I had already done my undergraduate in the US. Not
Ah, okay.
not in California, but I kind of like knew how to
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. And your English was good, so you're set. So that part's not hard. What was the hard part? Because you're entering AFI, which is like Hogwarts, right? Or it's like
Yeah.
Top Gun Academy. Like, do you remember
Yeah.
those first days and like real day where you see everyone else's work and you can't control that instinct to, kind of compare yourself to people, and like what were your feelings those first few days?
I mean, exactly that. That was my realization. I remember that first day I sat down in the theater, and as I was watching everybody's job work, I realized that I was far behind. I remember asking myself, what am I doing here? Like, why did they accept me? These
Why
guys are,
did you do this to me, AFI?
yeah, it's like all these guys are so talented, all of them, and they have done so many great things. And I had this short film that it was not even finished; it was a work in progress. And I remember not wanting them to show it. When my time came, they showed the clip, and I was like, "This is so bad."
That must
you
have been
know,
so hard because especially
it was.
showing it in a big theater with these people that you don't even know yet, and it wasn't even finished, so you've never shown it to anyone. And the whole point of that
Ever.
is, yeah,
I,
ever.
I never had a short film in a festival or in front of an audience. That was my first audience, the AFI crowd.
Wow. Okay, so you're dying inside, but how was it received? What did people say to you?
I think it was badly received. Nobody said
Oh,
anything. Nobody said anything because I remember people talking to each other. And I remember people talking to the guys that you had just seen their work and it was great, cinematographers, directors, already teaming up. So I
yeah,
realized that there was this whole thing about teaming up from the get-go, and I didn't get that. And I remember being alone and I was like, scared and a bit shy, I guess, because I was like, who am I going to talk to? I was like just looking around. So I grabbed something to drink, and I remember, Faraz. Do you remember Faraz?
yes, yes. I still see him sometimes.
He came to me and said, "Hey, I liked your short film, and I already have a project that I think you would be great to direct." And I was like, "That's great."
You were
And
like,
I'm like,
I'll take it. I'll take
"I'll
it.
take it. I don't need to read it. I'll take it. I'll direct it."
But that is such. I mean, he's a sincere guy. He's also a very nice guy. But like that little moment can do so much for someone, right?
Yeah, a lot. And I've told him, I think he might remember probably. But it was amazing. I was impressed that from the beginning he was already working, he was already thinking, okay, who am I going to team up with? And he already had like a project that he wanted to do. And that was my whole experience through AFI, that everybody was so talented and so hardworking that nobody gave you an inch. Everybody was on top of their games the whole time. That's what I felt,
Yeah,
because I was coming from a world where film was far away, where we had no industry. So for me, everything was new and it was amazing. Just looking at the posters on the walls and knowing that people, those guys studied or came to AFI, and I was like, oh my God, this is like amazing. It's a dream.
yeah, yeah. That's that's so cool. So what was the? So you came in with experience, but not as much directing experience. You made something to apply.
Yeah.
What was the learning curve like? What was the big things that you learned in that first year?
Um, well, something that's always remained with me is this idea of, if you have nothing to say, don't say it. You know?
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember sometimes, because I was eager to do stuff and writing things, and sometimes those things came out of just my willing to write something. And I had really nothing to say at that moment. I hadn't thought about, okay, what would I really want to take out of me and make it, probably turn it into some creative piece or some short film or script or whatever. And I remember I learned that lesson in one of my classes, because I had directed a scene where nothing was happening, and it was horrible. Uh, there were all these ideas in there, but nothing really going on in terms of character, in terms of the story. And I understood that concept at that moment. And I said, okay, from now on, I'm only gonna do things that I care, that I feel that I need to tell, that I feel that I need to get out of me. If
Yeah.
I don't feel it, it's not worth spending time or doing, and it's not
Yeah.
gonna come out well, actually.
Right. Exactly. It's you won't feel satisfied, and the audience won't either. You feel it when you watch those things.
It's amazing, you know. Audience feel it. If you don't feel it, they won't feel it either. And it's something that is hard to explain. I mean, you can break it down to the technicalities and say, okay, this is probably why this is not working, and I can fix it this way. But at the end of the day, it's like if you are not invested in it, people are not going to, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great lesson to get across. What about, so you said you were 35, right?
Yeah.
That the average age at AFI is usually like 26, when people start. Did you
Yeah.
feel that as any kind of factor in your experience?
I always knew that I was on the older side of the the whole class. I met some of the guys that were older than me. I think one or two. It must have been like four of us that were on that range. But I never felt that I was, I mean, everybody was so mature, or I was not a mature person. But I felt,
Yeah, you met in the middle. Yeah.
I kind of like felt right at home, you know.
That's good.
Yeah, I never felt that I was too old, or I always felt like a little kid because I had so much to learn.
Yeah.
Most of the things that I saw or learned at AFI, it was the first time that I heard about them.
Hmm.
And so it was like, oh my God, it's like I have to keep my eyes open and my ears, very tuned, because it's everything was like amazing.
Yeah.
So I never felt that.
That that's good to hear. That's good.
Mhm.
Um, so AFI like forces you to collaborate, right? And changing these teams that you go through in the first year, and then thesis film second
Yeah.
year. Not all collaborations are successful, but like you can learn a lot from those not successful collaborations. Did you have one? Did you have one that didn't go so well, but learn something from that?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, my cycle one, I remember that it was tough because I hadn't worked on a film before. I hadn't worked with a crew. I mean, I did the series at the network, but it was in a totally different position.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was, even though I was hanging out on set and spending time with the directors and the writers, uh, I could just step away and I was out. I was not needed because my primary, uh, you know, uh, I was a producer, so I had to do other things. So I
Right.
never felt really part of the team. I was always like an outsider. And being in that crew for my cycle one, I remember it felt like a first time for me as a director. When everybody's asking you questions and you have to actually make the decisions on set. In front of with the actors, with work with your cinematographer, and my collaboration with the cinematographer was tough because he, on the other side, had a lot of experience.
Mhm.
He
Yeah.
must have like, what's happening with this guy? All these ideas, because I had like a lot of ideas that I wanted to do, and I realized after that I wasn't listening very much.
Mm. Yeah.
And that was the cause. That's what caused the friction. And it was tough at the beginning, but then we kind of like learned our ways on the second day and third day. But after that, we never worked again, because it was rough. But I think I learned that lesson. I don't remember if somebody told me that, but I remember realizing that I wasn't listening. I wasn't hearing what other people were saying, and that's when you collaborate with a team, and especially as a director, you have to listen a lot. I learned that sometimes the director is the person that talks the less
Mm.
in
Yeah.
a on
A
a
good
set,
director. Yeah. A good director.
and listens more, and kind of like tries to detect what the best ideas are. So that helped me. So my second experience directing a short film at AFI was a lot better, and the third was rough, but not because of the same issues of the beginning, but it was someone else's. It was someone else that didn't want to listen, so it was rough for me and for
Oh, right.
all of us.
That's the other challenge, is how do I adapt my communication to someone who's not listening, which
Yeah, you
sometimes you
try.
can't.
You can't, and that's one thing. That's one of the things that uh, working with a crew at a school. It's kind of like how do I say this? In the professional or the professional world, you get to choose. You get more chances to choose and to interview people and to get to know people before you work with them. So
Yeah.
that aspect is kind of like solved. It's very, the chances that you run into some unexpected thing, like that, are less. It can happen, but are less than when you're in school. Sometimes you have to adapt to what you have.
Yeah.
They're not.
Well, also in the professional world, you know, you can fire someone, which is
And change.
actually you should do if there is a problem early. Don't work together. But at school, you're stuck together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So but that's also good, because it's a good restriction to learn how to work with. It
Yeah.
kind of like, I think it helps you be more resilient when you run into problems, and sometimes you run into problems that are not even yours. Some people in the team, they don't get along, and it helps you kind of like understand that that's possible. That it happens. That's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
When you don't experience that, you tend to think that the world is gonna, that everything's gonna fall apart, and there's, you don't see solutions or ways out. uh, but when you've been there, in a way, that that you're gonna be okay.
Yeah. How did you take learning how to take critique and criticism of your work? Sometimes it does
Oh
help in that instance when you have more life experience, you're older, you can handle it better.
man, crying.
Or crying. Yeah.
Oh, the narrative workshop, remember? Oh my God,
Oh God. Well.
that was tough. And I've tried to reproduce some of that with my students here at school, like
Mhm.
trying to, okay, telling them, okay, you have to learn how to accept critique, and I've done a couple of exercises where I tell them, okay, you cannot talk, just listen. And it just don't happen, and it doesn't happen. They start arguing, but at AFI we were all disciplined, and we knew it was kind of like the tradition. So you would go on stage and just listen to what everybody had to say, and that was tough, because the first instinct that you get is like, everybody's wrong. They're all
Of
idiots.
course. Of course they're wrong.
They
Yeah. They
they don't
don't get your
understand.
art. Yeah.
They don't get me.
Yeah.
And it takes some time to realize that is so valuable, because if it's not on the screen, I mean, if someone, even from right now, I just went through the process of releasing a film, and before we released the film, during the first second cut, we did a lot of a few screenings, to get audiences feedback, and that helped me a lot. And I never felt threatened, and I was able to take what I heard and sit down and try to understand what was happening and what I had the chance to fix or improve. And I would have never been able to do that if I hadn't go through the narrative workshops at AFI. I was trained for that. I
Yeah.
cried already, so I'm ready to accept, and listen, and know that it's not personal, and whatever someone is telling you, it's like a gift. At the end of the day, you can turn the negative, because you're always going to feel bad. That you can that's always going to be there. That
Yeah.
first spark that makes you want to kill that person is like, man, I just want to kick you out of the room. But I think experience helps you make that disappear very fast. And then,
Yeah.
guys, okay, this is actually good. This person is helping me, and it's great what I'm hearing.
Yeah. It's funny.
That
Yeah, the more you talk about the process of filmmaking, it's like there are a lot of parts of it that are really painful, but they're just you have to just learn to embrace it and accept it and get it over with, right? Like that first time you see an assembly, getting notes on your script and then getting feedback screenings, like they're
yeah,
never fun, they're never enjoyable, but it's the process.
it's a process. Yeah, it's and I think it's what you just said, embracing in a way the pain. It's different. When you want to jump off the window because you think the world's over, or you feel bad and you embrace it, and you're just like, okay, I'm there right now. I'm gonna have a beer, and it'll go away. I just have to just slip it in or think
Yeah.
about it. Something's going on. That's why I'm feeling this way. So I'm gonna find out what it is and just become.
Right. Right. That's the work part, right?
I didn't
Um,
have that I cycle one at all. It was all about
I
like
always
raw.
say like, yeah,
And that's
I always
pleasure.
say it's best to have your worst experience in cycle one because you get it out of the way, you learn the most, you go forward. The people that were like had the successful, that had the hits in cycle one, I'm always
Uh,
like, oh no, this is bad because now you have it's in a way they have a target on their back. Um, you're inevitably going to fail, like that's just the process. But now they're like emboldened and they're overly confident and they're just going. And you're just like, oh no, oh no. I'm
yeah,
sure it
yeah,
happened in your class.
it happened, and I wish I knew that. I mean, maybe not because of course you ask yourself why I didn't do well my cycle one and other people is doing well, and then the cycle two is better, cycle three is a failure. But you're right. Now that I think about it, I saw that in a few of my classmates,
Yeah,
and it's what you said. I guess failure at the beginning kind of puts you alert. You are more alert, and you
yeah,
know that you have another chance, and you are like more uh, willing to risk also. Because there's nothing to lose. I already fucked up my cycle one, so what am I going to do in the second
yeah,
one? I'm going to risk it all.
yeah. Let's go even further. Yeah, no, you don't want to peak too early. You want to peak like you did in your thesis because your thesis was very successful. Yeah,
It was unexpected. It's funny because I still have that feeling. uh, I remember when we went to the first screening of our thesis film. It was Chris Young, Raza, and me, and we listened to the comments, and it was not bad. We heard some things, and we also heard some good comments, but we were all anxious. And our feeling was that we fucked it up. We stepped out of the theater, and I remember we all looked at each other, the three of us, and said, "What do we do now, man? We are fucked."
even though it went well.
Yeah, but we didn't realize,
Yeah,
and now I recognize that feeling, and it's because you want to push more, and it's very important to always push more, push more. You don't want to be satisfied with what you have. It's important to realize that it's okay, but I feel comfortable pushing, 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 and sometimes that doesn't let me be happy when you need to be happy. I'm like, okay. And Raza, he shot the film, and he was here for the premiere, and we went, into the screening, and people came out, and Raza and I stood next to each other, and we were like, okay, let's go home, right? And I told him exactly this. I was like, man, do you realize that we never get like, oh man, we did it, we're great, we finished. We're like, okay, that's it, next.
I
I,
mean, yeah,
I don't
right.
know if that's good, or I don't know if that's good or bad, but I remember having that
No,
feeling.
that's how. I mean, look,
Um,
you should, yes, it's an accomplishment. You made a movie, but I prefer that attitude of like, move on, you know,
Go to the next one.
go to the next one. Like, because look, if you're real filmmakers, you enjoy the process. You want to make the next one. You want to go on, right? You don't want to make the one movie and be like, we're done. We're done. We made the perfect movie.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would ever. I mean, if someone ever feels that way, like to do a film and believe that it's perfect and that's it. It's always, it's always painful in some way because you realize that you could have done better when it's too late, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the nature of it too.
But also,
You
if you
learn.
train yourself in that attitude of like, let's move on to the next one, then, not everything's going to be a success. And so the ones that don't do so well, you're already moving on to the next one, which you need to do as quickly as possible when
Yeah,
you have those failures.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. But don't get me wrong, it was a great ride at AFI because it gave me so much. Um, it made me happy. It made me more confident because of where I came from, I guess. I remember when I came to AFI, I went to the showcase at the DGA, and I was like, as everything at the beginning for me at AFI, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I saw the short films and people and the screening in this big theater. And I remember thinking, if I could only show my short film here, that would be it. That's it. That's my objective, nothing else, because everything will come after. I didn't think that there was anything else after that. It was like, you made it to this screening, that's it.
Yeah, at the
They're gonna
DGA,
take it.
that's what a director does. That's their
They're
heart.
gonna they're gonna call you and take it, and ask you to direct the next Star Wars or something. That's it. I need to do that. If I do that, I'm there. And we got to the showcase, and I remember that. And for me, it was very special. I took my 5 minutes, I stepped away from the crowd, and just went outside and just dug it in and said, "You got it. That's good." A lot of work. I've got to this. I've come to this point, and that gave me a lot of satisfaction and confidence. I remember. The next day, I realized that, fuck, there's a lot more. Nothing's going on.
You're yeah. George
Where's my
Lucas isn't
check?
calling you. Yeah, where's my Star Wars? No, you're
Where's
right.
my
It's
How am I
sobering the
going to
next
pay the
day.
bill? Nothing
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
But that really is beautiful to hear, that you went to that showcase early on and you're like, this means I made it if I get here. And then you got there, because I mean, we don't do the showcase like that anymore, but back then it was
Oh,
what, five films were shown?
it was. I think it changed every year. In our year, it was 3 films.
3 films. You were one of 3 films.
Yeah, and they were all screened one after the other one. And I remember it was Casey. Do you remember Casey? It was his thesis, and it was Malcolm's thesis as well.
Yeah.
And I remember that I was more interested in watching their faces than watching the actual film, because I had seen it already. But I was looking at them and trying to realize, I wanted to see how they felt for some reason,
Yeah.
because I was feeling great, and I was like, man, are you guys like feeling the same way I'm feeling? And they were like, there's no way to know because I'm just watching them. But I was like, man, I want to party with these guys tonight.
It's so beautiful to hear you talk about it, like taking that moment, to yourself, because people forget about that. They get caught up in it. Everybody goes and talks to them, but like, reminding yourself, it's in the statement, reminding yourself to remember the moment,
To remember them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I stepped out in the middle of the screening, and I was listening to the audio playing in the theater, and I said, okay, this is my moment. That's it. And then I went back in.
It shows that you're just a storyteller, because when you tell the story of, you premiering your film, it's a movie. You're telling me a movie.
Oh, really? Well, it's good
All
to
right.
hear.
So since this is about, like, life after film school, talk
Yeah.
about what that thesis, the success of your thesis film, what it did for you after film school, because it won a DGA award, which is a very prestigious honor.
Yeah, it was great. I decided to stay in LA. I remember, and there were all these meetings happening with managers, and it was a fun ride to go through. But nothing was happening. It was a lot of talk. I remember, and it was tough for me to stay in LA because it was so expensive. Uh, we had already had, we had a child with my wife in LA, and that was also tough. And I remember, and we were all, we're gonna stay here and just fight it because this is it. And I was very determined to stay in LA because that was like the path, right? And I remember one of my professors, which I really respect and love, Bob Mandel. He told me before we finished AFI. I remember we sat down for a coffee, and he told me, go back to Ecuador. And I was like, why? And he was like, because you are from there, your stories come from there. And when you talk to me about the things that you want to direct and the things that you want to do, it feels like it's there. What are you going to do here? And he was telling me, like, also get a job, get a day job. That the first thing you need to do is get a day job. And I was like, no, man, I'm going to do the next Star Wars movie.
You don't get it, Bob. You just don't get it, man.
I guess many of us feel that way. You graduate and it's like, okay, now I'm gonna conquer the world.
Yeah, that has not
And
changed. Yes.
yeah, and I started working, you know, and I was working like long hours and writing.
What were you
Uh,
doing for work?
I did an internship at this production company called Chromista, which is Darren Aronofsky's company, through AFI.
Oh,
AFI put me in touch with you know, they were willing to accept one or two students for that year for
yeah.
internship. So I went there when I was still at AFI, and then after school they you know, I just stayed with them hanging out, and they gave me jobs occasionally, you know,
Hmm.
like I would assist their directors. I stayed there for like a year, and also I worked for a company called EcoSet, which what they did is they made the movie sets green, and especially the Target commercials. Target was their main client. So I would, you know, go as an eco monitor that they call, and go to these amazing productions, you know, like $2 million commercials, you know, with Claudio Miranda shooting the commercial, and Roman Coppola directing, and I was next to them with the trash bag, you know, just getting recycling the trash and separating. But for me, it was like amazing to be close to the action, you know, because at that moment I thought that I also wanted to direct commercials. So I worked for EcoSet for a long time, and I worked there because my wife worked there first. She's an environmentalist, and she works in environment. She's done that her whole life, and she found a way to you know, kind of like relate film to that. She found EcoSet, and we needed money, and they gave me a job, and it was great. And it was great because now everything that we do it green, you know,
That's really cool. That's great.
because of that experience.
Yeah.
So I work doing that, and and I remember, you know, AFI, you know how AFI puts you in touch with mentors, right?
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to you know, for the mentor that I got, that, you know, Sam Esmail,
Oh
which
my
is,
God. Yeah.
yeah, he's an amazing human being, very generous, and you know, the mentorship you supposed to last like 3 sessions, and whatever happened after that, it was up to you.
Yeah.
And it was great because I had the chance to talk to him a lot and get his advice. It was at the moment where he was also, you know, starting the second season of his series. And I remember I was feeling a bit bad, you know, because nothing was happening, and I was spending all this time in these meetings and doing all these jobs, trying to get something going. And I remember in one of our conversations, um, he uh, he he told me, if you have the chance to write more, you know, to work more on your ideas, more time, that's that's what I would do, you know. That's the most valuable thing. That it was very hard for me, he told me, that he had to fight a lot to invest more time in his things. And uh, and i and I told him that if I would go to Ecuador, I will have that time, you know, I will have that luxury in a way. And I remember it just made sense. He told me, you know, if oh man, if you have the chance to do that, that's a privilege, you know. Forget about the managers, forget about the meetings, that's nonsense, he told me, you know.
Yeah.
You're not gonna find the person that is gonna bump up your career because you're not ready. When you are ready, they will come to you, he told me, you know. They will knock on your door, and then you'll choose who to work with. Before that, it's just bullshit, you know. Nothing's gonna happen. You're just wasting your time. I wasted 5 years of my life, he told me, or something like that. And that kind of like got me thinking, because we were in the midst of making that decision, and I got offered this job at the university where they were offering also to support me in my projects, you know, kind of like they do with the scientists. They are very big in science.
Hmm.
So they were willing to give me less teaching time if I was working on writing a script or shooting a movie or something like that, because they wanted their professors to be active in the industry, you know. So they
That's
are very.
amazing. What a great opportunity.
It was a great opportunity. I didn't see it at the time,
Yeah.
but I decided to give it a shot. So my wife and I, we said, okay, let's give it a shot. Let's go back to Ecuador. If it doesn't work, we're back in LA in 6 months, and it worked great. You know, it was exactly as they said. You know, And that's why I came back to Ecuador. And
Wait, when was that? How many years after AFI? It's like 2 years?
so yeah, I graduated in May 2016, and I came back to Ecuador in 2018.
Yeah.
So I stayed in LA for like a year and a half.
So when you were doing those meetings and everything, was part of it they wanted to? Did you have a material? Did you have a feature script that you were talking about or pitching?
I had a feature script. I had two feature scripts actually, and yeah, some of them will request to read it, and nothing was happening. I guess that it was not, it just didn't click. Um, some other people will ask, they would ask you if you had a project going to give them a call. I started working with a manager once. I remember in this series, which and I started developing these characters for this amazing project that I thought was gonna take off, and never happened. And I not lost because I was going through that work a few months ago, and it was great. I want to kind of like get back to it.
Yeah.
So it's not lost time, but I remember spending like 3 4 months and nothing was going on. I was shadowing directors, commercial directors for Chromista, and that was great at the beginning. And then after a while, I realized that it became repetitive and that nothing was happening. So everything felt like stalling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't like that feeling. I remember some of my friends were telling me you have to be patient, because you have to just keep working and it'll happen. And I was like, no way, man. I just need to get things going somehow.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was part of the decision of living LA.
I like that advice that Sam gave you of focus on writing. Would you give that advice now too? Do you agree with that? Like writing is the way into directing for a career?
Yeah, yeah, completely. Not necessarily into if you write scripts into directing, but I'm a believer that you are a better director when you are a better uh, storyteller in a way, and it's a great way of training yourself. Even if you don't like to write, I love to write, uh, mm, but it's just the understanding the story and the tools to translate that into a visual narrative. That's what AFI gives you and the experience as a director gives you. But I believe that is not going to be good enough if you don't spend time with just storytelling, pure storytelling in some form.
Hmm.
That's what I believe. It's very important for a director. Maybe not for every director, uh, but I think if you want to find that thing that you don't know how to articulate, that kind of like gets you up at night. Um, the more, for me, the more you explore characters, the more you write, I think it becomes more evident, and it becomes easier for you to see it when it's in front of you, and it becomes harder to choose ideas because my tendency was to write everything that I was thinking. Oh, I have this idea, and I would write it down. Now I find myself just disregarding ideas like all the time, because I think I have a better sense of what could work for me and
Hmm.
what doesn't work for me, even if the idea feels very attractive at the beginning. So you become more careful in what you choose to do, I guess.
Right. Right. Because you
Yeah.
can't make them all and they all, time is,
Yeah.
non-renewable resource. And you have to, if you're going to commit time to something, it's going to be something you really are going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that way.
So writing is a part of your routine now.
It's part of my routine. Yeah, it's something that I like to do a lot, and and also something that makes me feel that I'm working because you don't have the pleasure of directing every day. I mean, at least not for me
Mhm.
now. And writing is kind of like my way to get into this world that that I like. I haven't been writing lately because of the film. It just takes so much of your time, but now I'm starting it again, and I'm very happy because I was waiting for actually next week I'm gonna start writing again, and I've been taking notes and deciding what am I gonna continue working on. And now that I know I'm going to sit down and write, it feels,
You're
you know,
excited to get back into it, I bet. Yeah.
yeah, it's like going to Disneyland. You know, you're going to Disneyland next
Yeah.
week. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's so that's
I
so cool.
really feel that way. I found out that I like writing a lot. Yeah.
That's great. Wait, so let's talk about you get back to Ecuador because the film The Wannabes, Los Wannabes, right?
But one of these, yeah,
Yeah. So because it feels like that was a long process, because I remember you coming and doing that test screening,
a
when was
long
that?
time ago.
Long time. It was pre-pandemic, right?
No, actually, it must have been to
Was it?
2000 to 2022.
Oh, okay. So I don't know why in
Yeah,
my mind it feels like a long time ago, but
it's a long time for me because we shot the film in 2021,
mhm.
and I went to LA to edit the final stretch of the film in June 2022. So I was there in around because it was summer already.
Oh, right. Right.
Yeah, summer. Yeah, it was 2022. Yeah,
So
it
what
took it took me 2 years.
took you 2 years to make the
Yeah.
movie, but you wrote this movie, and so you get back to Ecuador and at what point it wasn't something you were working on in LA, right?
No, no, not at all. It's actually something that I would have never thought that I was gonna write. You know, it's a dark comedy. Um, it's kind of like a silly movie in some
Which is
aspects, but
not your normal stuff for you, for
not in my
Santiago.
normal stuff. Not at all. You know, I was like
Yeah.
in a different direction.
Yeah.
But it happened that the pandemic started, and not because of the pandemic, it would have killed the project that I was working on. But I think a month before the pandemic, this project that we were about to shoot fell down. You know, we couldn't continue with that. And it was a movie about human trafficking, kind of like the same subject matter of my thesis film. It was on the same vein. And the pandemic started, and I was like, you know, I didn't want to write any of the things that I was writing. You know, usually like social things, very dense and strong. I because I was feeling bad as well, and I found this idea that I had, this note that I had written a long time ago, because the movie is about this scam where a lot of people lost money in Ecuador back in 2003, and this thing happened to some friends of mine. They lost everything they had, and when they told me the story, I remember it was so sad, but it was so funny at the same time, that I wrote a note saying that you should make a movie about this. And I found that little note, and I called him up on the phone and told him, can you tell me the story again? And I remember how I felt when they told me the story, and it was just funny. And I said, okay, I'm just going to write this because I feel like, it's something that I want to have fun writing. The world is falling apart. I don't want to write a thriller or a drama. I want to write something that it's fun for me to write. And it was like that. I was laughing my guts out at 1 a.m. in the morning, and my wife was asking me, what's going on? And I was like, man, I don't know. I just wrote this scene, and it was so funny for me.
Yeah.
And that was it.
What a great feeling though, like that because that motivates you to keep going, and then you're like you get excited to write the next scene and the next scene. Yeah.
Yeah, and the next thing, and exactly, it was like a momentum. And 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 I wrote the script very fast. I would say the first draft was written like in less than a month. You
Wow.
know,
That is
from
fast.
from the piece of paper to the first draft.
Jeez.
And when I wrote the next two drafts, I decided to approach one of my collaborators. It was someone that was willing to support my previous film, the one that didn't happen. And I showed this idea to him, and he was like, "Man, this is so funny. Let's do it." And he decided to support us. And it was a very low budget film, so we could handle going into production with what we had, and we kind of like conceived the film that way. Something that was born and it was meant to be done during this chaotic time, during the pandemic. So that's how it was made.
Yeah. And so of course, my favorite part of this is you brought in your thesis cinematographer, Rasa Parton.
Rasa came to Ecuador to shoot it. Yeah,
So cool. I love that.
it was
So
great
why did you, I mean, to me, it's obvious, but talk about like why you wanted him there to shoot it.
because Rasa, he shot my thesis film at AFI, and we became very good friends, and we developed ways to create, to collaborate creatively that just work for me very well. With Rasa, things go faster now because we know each other, and we understand each other. And after AFI, we shot a commercial together. We shot a music video together, and we were producing a documentary together that never happened, both as producers as well. So we had worked on many things. I mean, we had spent a lot of time talking and about what's going to happen in our lives and careers, and our families kind of like grew up together as well. And when the pandemic started, he was one of the first persons that I called to with the idea, and he loved it. He liked it. So he was part of the process. He had already been in Ecuador shooting, so he knew his way around. He already had crew
Oh,
and
that's
people.
amazing. He
Yeah,
was already shooting movies in Ecuador.
yeah. We shot this music video in a commercial, a big commercial here in
Oh,
Ecuador.
he was doing things for you in Ecuador, not other people.
Yeah, in Ecuador. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
I would bring him to Ecuador. Thinking, okay, because I wanted to shoot a movie here. So yeah, when I offered him to shoot the movie, it was one of the things that the pandemic gave us is that most people were available.
Yeah.
That played in our favor with the cast, with the locations, with everything. So people were available. Nobody was shooting, so it was okay. Let's go to Ecuador and shoot a movie there. And we shot for 27 days, and there was nobody. Everybody was at home. uh, 27 days, and we must have had like 25 locations, which was insane, you know? And some of them were at the same place, let's say.
Yeah.
But because of the pandemic, we could just go from one location to the next one in sometimes in 10 minutes
Yeah.
because there was no traffic, no restrictions. The parking was wherever you wanted to park, it was just there.
Yeah.
And we couldn't shoot the movie the way we did it now, for example. So Raza came, and he was already working a lot. He had already done some big projects, and now he comes to Ecuador to kind of like shoot like a running gun style, guerrilla style, stealing things. Okay, let's go to his location. Nobody's
Yeah.
there. Let's get in.
Right. Right. Everything that AFI wouldn't let you do if you were making it right through AFI, right?
All the things that AFI wouldn't let us do, we
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah. I love that. I always say,
And
like, you go to AFI, you learn all the rules so that your first couple features, you know which ones you can break, because you
yeah,
just can't make a movie that way uh, under a budget.
but
But you did it.
we never had a cable going, uh, in the middle of the stage, like nobody, all the rules and protocols that we learned at the AFI. It was great because it allowed us also to move even faster.
Yeah.
The way Raza handles his team, it was amazing. We were really able to create like a bubble around these actors that it was their first movie. They've never worked before, so working that fast, with so much pressure, we really needed to create an environment for them to focus and be able to pull it off, and it was great. And in big part that happened because Rasa just handled his team, and the art, also the art department, they talked, and they made agreements on how to handle things. So it was great. It was the best set that I've worked on. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. I was like, somebody please talk to me. You don't have to just be quiet all the time.
That's so great. So great to hear. So we'll wrap this up. But like, talk about like what's something that you learned at film school that you applied on that feature.
um Something that I learned.
Whether it's
Well,
technical or artistic or even personal.
so well, two things. One at a personal level. I remember Rob Spera once told me, uh, "You always have to be. You are the one who sets the tone for your crew. You know, if you're feeling bad, if you're feeling anxious, you're gonna, people are gonna feel that way, and that's gonna go down the entire team. So be aware of, how you are on set, and always be on the top of your game with preparation, with planning, and also you personally. So that's something that's always stayed with me, and I apply that in during this movie a lot, because the time was tight. The challenge was very great, and I decided to kind of like take things in a very light way, even when problems came to us. I had a great producer, and I was able to just kind of like set that tone, that to let everybody know that we are okay. We were all the time afraid that someone was gonna get COVID, and that was it. We would have had to stop production, and in such a small film, we wouldn't have been able to go back. So that was a fear, but everything was, we were able to just take it in a very light and fun way. So and I had Bob in my head, just remembering those things, and that was great. And I guess the other thing that AFI has given me is planning and preparation. That the only way to, because sometimes we and I see this with my students all the time. Sometimes we think that preparation or planning is going to kill the creativity. It's going to kind of like, it's going to stiff things up in a way.
Yeah.
People are afraid, but I found that is the opposite, and that's something that they will tell us at AFI all the time. The more you prepare and the more you plan, the freer you are, to try things, to discover, to explore, to realize that something's better than what you thought
Mhm.
on paper. So again, the pandemic allowed me to just plan the hell out of it. And I was very, very meticulous in my work as a director before production. I did this amazing breakdown with notes and scene analysis and all these technical things that just helped me be free on set, and feel prepared. So that's something that I realize is very hard for people to accept, because you don't see the benefit of, you don't learn the benefit of it unless you do it a lot.
Right.
And at AFI at the beginning, for me, it felt like math homework. It was like, man, I don't know what this is for. It's
Mhm.
not necessary. And then little by little, you start understanding what the tool is for, what's the benefit of it. And for me, it became that way at AFI. It was like a arc, because I started knowing that I was not going to use that in my life. I was like certain, I'm never going to do this type of analysis. This is boring and it doesn't work for me. And I ended up becoming a freak of it.
And I'm sure you teach it too.
Oh man, I give them such a hard time with it. And I see how they don't get it. And I'm like, no, you got to keep doing it. It'll get to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something that I got from AFI, it frees me, it allows me to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. You're building like this safety net, that gives
Yeah.
you the freedom to try things. And if they're not working, you can fall on that net. You're like, oh, but I have that plan. And, even if it's just for you, like you said, going through that exercise,
Yeah.
you can defend any decision you have because you did the work.
You did the work. Yeah. You've gone through a version of that somehow in your head.
Yeah.
And that helps you a lot with actors, with your crew, and
Yeah.
with problems, when you lose a location or something happens, and it's like a nerve wracking. But if you are prepared, you know what the solution is. You don't have to go through a lot of pain and anxiety to find. Some people work that way. I don't. I need to have fun on set. I need to
Yes.
really. Otherwise, why would you? I'm not very masochistic in that. In that area when I'm shooting.
Yeah.
My wife tells me, when you are in pre-production, you are like you're not a good person to be around with. You're like but on set you're very calm, and it's fun. and I that's the way I like it to be, you know. It's like
Yeah.
on my own arena in pre-production, I need to prepare, but when
Yeah.
I'm on set, it's like, okay, let's have fun.
That's great. That is great. So question, what have you sent the movie to Sam Esmail? Do you stay in touch with him?
Yes, I stay with in touch with him, and not lately. He knows that I'm doing the movie, and he asked me to send the movie to him when we are done. And just a week ago, we managed to finish the English subtitles.
Oh, great.
So I'm probably gonna send it to him. You know, it's a new year, saying hi, and then see if he has time to. I just watched his latest film, and it was, oh man, it blew my mind away. And I was
I
like,
haven't seen it yet. I want to see it. I'm a little scared, but yeah.
no, I liked it a lot. I
Yeah.
liked it a lot.
Wait,
So
so
I'm
is your movie gonna be available on streamers now that it has English subtitles?
yeah. So basically, that's the plan. We made a deal with a distribution company in the U.S. And they are going to release the film in April.
Great. Wait,
Uh,
in theaters or
no, so what they're going to do is do a release. Probably it'll be in some in some I'm guessing in some theaters, like
yeah,
hopefully they, but they'll do like a release, and by that time they hope to have found a home for the movie. So
gotcha.
they are working on it, and they want to do it on the second trimester of the year. And yeah, so I still don't know how that's going to work, but we are excited that it's going to be there. So it's going to be released in some capacity.
That's very cool. I'm excited for that, and we will promote it at AFI. Well, man, this has been awesome, and I still haven't seen the movie, and also like we barely scratched the surface on everything that we couldn't talk about. But you know, we should do another one of these when the movie's coming out in the US.
That'll be awesome. I'll let you know how that's going, and yeah, it's been fun, Chris. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for doing it, and we still have to figure out how to get some people down there to visit Quito and the Galapagos.
If you think of someone, it's coming up and it's fun. You should come.
I would love to, but I don't know if I'm qualified to like go teach something.
For sure,
But
Paul.
I'll go with someone.
That's like that.
I'll be the assistant.
That would be cool.
All right, man. Well, have a good night. I know it's late out there. Thank you for doing this, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. I'll see you soon, Chris. Bye.